over from now, right here. Good evening to you, Mr. Severin, and of course, this is the post-budget presentation right here on DBS Radio.
Thank you, brother. Good evening to all.
Good evening.
Good evening, good evening.
Yeah, we're here on budget protecting our progress, strengthening our independence, securing our future, as presented by the Honorable Dr. Irvin McIntyre, Minister of Finance, Economic Development, Climate Resilience, and Social Security. I have with me here in studio two guests, and also one of the guests will be joining us later this evening. I would like them to introduce themselves. To my right.
Right. Testing, microphone check. Okay. Good evening, Dominica. This is Natasha Labad, and I am here representing myself in my capacity as the CEO of Outsource Development. And just a disclaimer, as I speak tonight, I am speaking only in the capacity as myself, and I am not representing any other organization apart from my personal organization, Outsource Development Studio. And so all of my thoughts and everything I share here will be simply informed by my background as a business process outsourcer and project manager, and in no other official capacity.
Thank you, Natasha. To my right, I have young Mr. Registe. Could you introduce yourself to us?
Good afternoon to all. My name is Registe. Some may know me, I am the first vice president for the National Youth Council of Dominica. However, as Miss Natasha said, I will be speaking in my personal capacity today here, and it's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you and welcome. Guys, let's set some context in terms of what Dr. McIntyre presented. And I'm going to just give you some historical perspective, and we will go into our discussions. I want to hear your views and to share your views with the public as we have a little discussion. We also have joining us online, Mr. Green. I'll just ask Mr. Green to introduce himself, and then we'll go into the background of our discussions this evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kenny Green. I am the CEO of Advance Your Management Group of Advanced Global Partners and a director in Freestyle Inc. I am also a past president of the Dominica Association of Industry and Commerce, and I have a keen interest in the economic happenings of the country and in the budget statement. And I will be giving commentary on the views as I see it as a business person with a presence in Dominica.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Welcome. And to our listening public out in Dominica, across the media world, good evening. We are here to discuss budget 2026-2027. First of all, let me just set some context here. We are 26 years into the current government sitting, the Labour Party government led currently by the Honorable Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit. It is important for us to see what journey we have been over the 26 years. Just imagine 26 years in. For guys like Regis, may have not seen this number of days on earth. No. So you could imagine that he knows nothing else but a Labour Party government.
Yeah.
And so it is important that as we present an annual budget, we're able to help the young people like Regis and many others to come into understanding that what the process is, why we are going through this process every year, but why this year is very critical for us as a country. Knowing that we are coming from the hills of an initial government in 2000 February, who started off in 1995, there are a number of things that the young people of Dominica needs to know, and we ourselves, so that it puts into context what is going on when we said protecting our progress. Imagine Social Security. The Minister of Social Security made some proposals today. But just imagine Social Security not being paid for a number of years, accruing a debt on government. Imagine that you take loans commercial rates to actually help in the development of your economy, knowing that there were concessional financing and grants available across the world, including friendly governments like Venezuela, Cuba, and many of the others who have been extending hand to Dominica as a young, developing, small island developing state. Think of the many threats that we have experienced across the world. Threats both internally, like weather conditions. We have gone through a number of trough systems, hurricanes and storms over the 26 years that rather than moving forward at the speed that we would anticipated, we have had many setbacks. Do you know that many of the loans that we have procured over the period of the past 26 years were mostly 90% of them response to disasters, response to shock, weather systems, COVID-19, and many others. These are the kinds of things that we have gone through over the past 26 years, yet we have made progress. So this evening, as we are discussing, I'm going to invite you, I will start with the youngster first. I would like him to tell me what his views are on the situation as presented by the finance minister of a budget and the heels of a serious secure of our future that we are going to be experiencing over the next year. Tell us, Regis. I'd like to get your views and tell us about you too.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you my views based off what I think of it. And you know, one thing that I've listening to the budget, I'd probably say that was my first time really sitting down, because I was working on the tech team. That was my first time sitting down and listening to a parliamentary, you know, discussion or what's going on. And it opened my mind, because, you know, most of the time you only get one side of the story. You know, you only get people on the road telling you, oh, the government not doing this, the government not doing that, you know, this, that, and the third. But then listening to the Honorable Mr. McIntyre, right? Honorable Mr. McIntyre speaking, and listening to the progress, I mean, of Dominica, you know, it's hard for me to just blindly follow them, you know. And Dominica had a 4.5% increase in sorry. Mm-hmm. Yes, 4.5%, and it was greater than what was in the ECCU and as well as the international standards. So when you look at these things, and then you hear about what they did for the schools, you know, 22 million direct investment for, or what they're going to do for the schools, 22 direct investment for students, including transportation and things of that sort. And when you sit down and listen to what's going to happen, it gives me hope for the future. You know, it gives me hope. And my favorite part of it, I'd say, is I'm an actor. I do acting, I do music. So the creative economy is very much what I'm a part of, you know. And listening, that probably my favorite part had to be what he had to say about the creative economy. You know, I was speaking on a panel discussion with the Alwyn Woolley Foundation a few weeks ago, maybe I'm over a little bit over a month, and we were talking about building a sustainable cultural industry. And some of the things that the panelists, myself, Mr. Ian Jackson, Mrs. Anita Bully, and Mr. Raymond Lawrence, and things that we were speaking of, you know, I heard it directly addressed as it relates to the creative economy, you know, and the creation, that the fact that the government is taking a step and creating the Dominica Creative Economy Development Agency, you know, to address things like a creative facility, you know, things like the Arawak House of Culture, and sustaining the culture of the Kalinagos as well, and even the music, the national studio, you know, it gives me hope as a young person, and as a musician, as an actor, as someone involved in the arts, even on the youth council, you know, it gives me hope to see that, you know, there's gonna be a future for the young people, you know. And I'm elated. You can say I'm elated, and you know, I have hope. It gives me hope for the future, and even in my latter years, you know, when I'm ready to retire, or if I ever want to invest in Dominica, it gives me hope that the opportunity will be there. It will be there because, as Mr. McIntyre mentioned, the plan towards 2040, increasing the population, and even the land prices. I believe last year, saying how it would drop to $10 and $5 a square foot, and that's incredible. That's incredible. You can buy land wherever it may be, Grand Bay, and I probably around the country, and $5, $10 a square foot. As a young person, it gives you hope. You can build your home, build your family home, and it wouldn't be too much of a cost because house prices are going up, obviously, of course. So it gives me hope. It gives me hope for the future, and I can't wait to see these things. And that is probably the most crucial part, for me, is to see it implemented, to see the progress, to see what's going on, because understanding that people have a lot of frustration toward the government in some sort of way. I don't share that frustration, but I would want to know why they have that frustration. They say that the government not doing this, the government not doing that, but I see hope for the future. So I'm looking forward to the implementation of a lot which was said, and yeah.
Thank you. That's a nice introduction. Natasha, you add to it?
Thank you. I want to frame my points from the perspective of an outsourcer. There are some things that really jumped out at me. I should perhaps also add to my disclaimer that, these are initial reactions from listening in. Obviously, we have had this for me is, in all of my time listening, this is a $1,125,225,495 budget. So it's a huge budget, and so today I had the opportunity to listen in and to pull out some of the snippets of, initiatives that obviously impacts me as a business owner. When I think and talk about outsourcing, I'm so happy to, see the outsourcing of solid waste being announced. For me, that was a headliner. I can confirm that as someone who does business and makes money from persons outsourcing services to me, I welcome this announcement that while the Solid Waste Management Corporation will retain processes and disposal oversight, there is now the opening up of, this opportunity where the government is now no longer going to be the provider, but now the commissioning of a service. And this obviously shifts and provides opportunity for entrepreneurs and persons to now, throw their hats in the ring. And this is an area that we have been asking, have been flagging, and this is obviously there are some flags for how ready are we, but I would say as an entrepreneur, someone who is always excited about opportunities, I saw this as an opportunity for prospective entrepreneurs, persons who, get ready. This is an opportunity for you to plug a gap in the market. And so that is something that, jumped out at me. This is a genuine commercial opportunity. The other areas, ease of doing business, again, from an operator's perspective and someone who, have to put together their P&L, we are always looking at the bottom line. And I say that small businesses like myself, we contribute to the economy of Dominica. And so things like ending the tax compounding, that 10% is going to have an impact on my bottom line. Things that the rebates, the 2% tax rebate, that's sort of now rewards, active employment opportunities that my business creates, and so that is an opportunity again for us. We've been asking for, ease of doing business mechanisms to, come into play. And so these are some of the things that really jumped out at me. Business Vulnerability Fund. Again, this speaks to resilience, and the minister was very transparent when he spoke of some of the challenges that this government has had to take into account: trade, climatic events. There is the oil prices, the wars. I mean, let's face it, Dominica is competing on an open market, and so we continue to be vulnerable, and we will continue to have a competition as something that we need to take into account. And so any sort of incentive, and any budget that is announced, and I see the young man noted that, while Dominica has done well, juxtaposing that against the ECCU predictions, and we've had some growth. Obviously, he's been what I liked about today when I listened in was that the minister was very, transparent. This is a budget that obviously is based on the desire for growth, and many of what has been announced, some of the plans obviously must be taken into account to what has happened externally. And so that's my sort of little intro. We'll have an opportunity to sort of unpack a little bit more. But as an entrepreneur, just looking in, I saw some things that sort of really spurred my imagination, and obviously will directly impact, my small business and the persons that my business, employs. And that's exciting for me.
Kenny, do you share with us your perspective?
Yes, thanks for the opportunity to share this with you. First of all, in the preamble, I've read the budget statement as made by the Finance Minister, Dr. McIntyre, today. I haven't looked at all of the underlying financials which come with the budget statement, and that will come along in the next few days. One of the things I'm always concerned about is the ability of the population to decipher the gravity of the budget. I would hate for the budget to become a cheerleading contest, because in order for the budget to actually gather weight and really have an impact, the average person must understand beyond snapshots what it means. And I think that has to be an effort going forward, because what happens at present is that you have shows like this in which we try to interpret the budget for the average person, but there are people who interpret it in a different way. And it would be good if the average person were able to get their own interpretation from being able to read the budget. So I think, apart from the process of the budget consultations, which I know, Reggie, you've been part of, and government has instituted the last few years, I really think, and it's not gender or age specific, I really do think there needs to be a continuing education exercise about what the budget really means and how it impacts people. Because what tends to happen is that you tend to have people deciding to interpret the budget based on who they trust. And that's not how it should be. The budget is a statement of fact, and then we get to judge based on the performance from the past year, which I think is something that we don't get to do much of, but also to look forward based on the statement as to the level of thought and the level of planning that the government is putting into raising capital to finance its plans for the incoming year. That being said, after this long preamble, there are things to like in the budget. There are not things to dislike. The government, I've said so many times, contrary to what some say, this government has proven over the years to be very conservative. And I'm reminded by what I was told by a former public official, which is that it's easy to want to be adventurous when you don't see the numbers that we're having to work with. Natasha put it quite aptly. Dominica is operating within the context of a global economy in which we are a small player and dependent on certain attributes of the global economy to stay stable. Things like, the fossil fuel prices, things like currency. Many of these things we're not in control of. Foreign wars, climate events, and as has been mentioned in the past, we do not create much of those conditions that affect us. So I think the most important parts of the budget is to look at the things we control. I like I've always advocated for that, so I think it's the writing of something which I think should have been done for some time, which is the compounding of the tax. Having that removed is, as Natasha said, that is something that I think every Dominican small business and even those Dominicans who import things themselves directly will welcome. It's going to make a difference to many people. The income tax, obviously, is going to make a difference to people's pockets. And whilst it does not seem to be significant, it is obviously, I think the commitment which I saw to recognize that the economy is going to go from one stage where it was dependent on certain parts of the function in financing, like CBI, to becoming a more mixed economy, not as a coincidence, not as a reaction, but as part of a plan, especially given that a large emphasis has been made in investing in tourism over the last 10 to 12 years. I think that is very important because there must be a business as usual and not a reaction always to events happening in the world. So those are some of the things. There are other things that I'll point out over the course of this show, but these are the things that stood out to me. And above all, I think the tone has to be that the government exists to serve the needs of the people. And when you see them reacting to the cry of people on the ground about high import duties, about the need for more cash in your pockets, those are the kind of things that people want to see. And in my opinion, that is the direction that government has to continue in.
So I'm going to tickle your fancies, dear panelists, on three fronts. Based on Natasha's lead in terms of creating what you call a environment conducive for the development of the private sector, which is critical in any budget presentation. And it is stemmed from securing our future, as Dr. McIntyre alluded to earlier in his presentation. We know that the cost of doing business, government is responsible for basically three major areas, and I want you all to choose choose one of these, and let's have some discussions on this. There is what you call policy reform, whether it's by legislation, regulation, standards, but government leads by policy. With the right policy, you create the right conducive environment. The second phase, which was mentioned by Mr. Regis, was about implementation. It has to do with the quality of service delivery. As a public service, one of the key issues that arises every year is the quality of public service delivery. Are we implementing in a timely manner? Are we fiducious in our responsibility, or is it just business as usual? And the third thing is the way in which we make decisions. Maybe 20 years ago, it was about being astute, being educated. But now we live in a data-driven environment. Without data, our decision-making is basically emotional or subjective. And so these are three fronts. To what extent does the budget appeal to improving the service delivery? Is there the right policy direction that is going on based on the budget presentation? And are we seeing that more and more the decision being presented in our budgets are driven by data, driven by what is actually happening globally, regionally, and nationally? Is that a few, Natasha?
I want to start from the perspective that outsourced development as an organization joined the Global Compact. Listening to some of the policy things again, as I said, this is a process. It takes a little while to go through all of the points raised. But I heard specific things mentioned in terms of how we treat with persons with disability, making arrangements for a role, a coordinator role that will allow for greater sort of private-public engagement and to sort of push, sort of add to what exists for persons who need to access those same resources that, a lot of times, we ask ourselves what is the level of service delivery. So that's one thing. As an organization who has signed up to the Global Compact, things like sustainability, better governance, inclusion, these themes are themes that we are passionate about. As I listen to the budget, there are certain things that obviously I said to myself, wow, there has to be some trade-off. I mean, the government, in announcing these concessions, will be giving up, funding or part of their income. And so it was really interesting just to really sort of understand where this financing mix is going to come from. Local resources, would it be loans, would it be grants? And so it's worth noting that the capital spending, it's a relevant data point for me when I look at, where is this funding mix, on what side does it lie? And so for me, I think there are some things that we can discuss here on the program, but what is really important is understanding, 18% of this entire recurrent budget will address debt funding, past commitments that we must maintain. And so seeing that we are not necessarily going the way of creating new, debt is one, I think, is one area that people are interested in. And so policies around that, looking at the approach that the government is taking in that sphere. And then the obligations that we have to running a compliant CBI program. Again, policies around that is something that we cannot get away from. And so as we think about the CBI program and our desire for a compliant program, our desire for a program that takes us down the route of keeping our stakeholders happy, as well as diversifying the mix of funding, I think is important. So I think these, in terms of policy conversations from the areas that I am choosing to target, these are some of the things that are really jumping out at me. Finally, perhaps one, and I came with my notes, so please allow me to refer to my notes. That revenue slide that I spoke about, again, I feel that's a genuine trade-off that was worth mentioning to me. And so I feel that, noting that non-tax revenue exceeding tax revenue, largely CBI driven, is something that has been, consistently been brought up by the government. And we as a people, we are interested in policies related to these programs. Another thing, the airport, international airport, major project, and significant funds set aside for the international airport and the marina. So it appears that the government is committed to these two fundamental capital investment projects that has scope to impact the Dominican economy in a way that will bring progress and commitments in those two fundamental areas, I think, is important, and ensuring that these projects continue. These projects are implemented in a way that benefits the people of Dominica, because ultimately, I mean, while these projects are being implemented by the government, these projects are for the people. And you can see from the budget, yes, this is a lot have been set aside for these two fundamental state projects. Yes.
Regis, you were speaking earlier on, you alluded to the issue of implementation, but we still have three areas: choose service delivery, policy reform, or data-driven decision making. Where do you stand, and how do you see this budget being impacted?
Can you repeat the three one more time?
So you have policy reform, which Natasha spoke about.
Right.
All right, this is one of the hallmarks of government's activities in ensuring that you create an environment conducive for private sector development. And just people being able to have more disposable income. The other area is to have what you call a proper public service in terms of the delivery of services. Do we have the right mechanisms, the right approach, the time efficiency and effectiveness of service delivery? And are we making decisions based on information, data-driven decision making? How do you see that budget features into these three areas, and what do you recommend we could do as a young person?
Thank you. As a young person, to speak on implementation, I've heard people who have businesses, and I've heard them speak sometimes, and or people who want to start up businesses, and one of the things that they mention is it takes so long to get through, so long to send in a letter or get something back or get a response back. So in terms of implementation and doing things in a timely manner, you can say one. It's one thing to say something, and it's another to do it. And if it's this budget, it prepares, it sets the guidelines of what's gonna happen, and it is for the people. As you mentioned, it's for the people, and for people to really trust in the words, or to trust in the budget. Obviously they have to see it. And for me, as well as for data, using the data that is presented, or using the data that has been gathered, to formulate a response to certain things as well. Because when you are you have to operate so that you don't have a repeat of the past. You don't want the past to repeat itself. And you, especially when you're seeing industries, that have the potential to make money, like such as the fishing industry and jobs as well. So when you have these industries that have the potential to make money, to do research on them and to collect the right data, and as you said, not to operate based off emotion, based off how we feel it might do, but to operate based off the facts, what's do, so that you can judge it properly, and that's just to touch on two. And as I'm saying, implementation, to implement what is being done. If you're a young business person and you're looking to start a business, or you're looking to you're looking to start a business, and you read in the budget that there's $19 million being funded through Aid Bank, to help to help small businesses. So you go to Aid Bank, and they tell you you have to write a letter here. So you go and you write your letter, and you're not getting any response, or you're taking long to get a response. That is poor implementation, and that would prevent people from wanting to start a business. Well, it would prevent them from starting a business, one, which would help them to build the economy, and then it would make them not to spread a business, not to start their business. And the thing is, with people in Dominica is such a small country, so word gets around fast. So when someone has a bad experience, they spread that experience to others, and others who may not be as informed. Maybe they didn't go about the process right. Well, in that case, then I guess it's their fault. But maybe okay, let's just say they went about the process right, but they're taking long to get through. Then they spread that information. Then more young people are not going to want to start businesses, or they might say they have to leave the country to start a business. But the provisions are being made here in Dominica. The provisions are being made for the young people. They're being made for the elderly people as well, those who want to come back. So it's that is a key thing in helping young people and persons in general. And as Mr. Kenneth,
Severin?
he was saying, there should be and that's the thing in schools overseas. They really do, and in high schools they really do emphasize learning about the government and learning about government policies. And I am a firm believer that there really should be, as he was saying, it's a good idea to educate the public on what a budget is, to help persons know, yes, this money is being allocated, but what does that mean? And then make a comparison. How much of that money was spent last year on what it said it was going to be allocated towards? Or what, yes, the Ministry of Education, I believe they got $76 million, but what is that going to be looking like for young persons? And to educate the public and to educate young business entrepreneurs to know that how they can get the most out of the opportunities presented to them in Dominica.
Kenny, I guess you heard what the young man Regis has said. Very important. Can you pick us up on this statement he has made?
So I want to piggyback two of you, both Natasha and young Regis. Policy, the things that are really important is for people to understand the effect of certain things that are issues or problems or directions, understanding how it's being dealt with through a budget, and then being able to know how they can take advantage of it. So let me give you an example. One of my favorite things in the budget is something I've advocated for, is the grandparent rule. Right? Seems very simple, right? But the government has repeatedly said that we have a birth rate problem in Dominica. This is not unique. In fact, Japan, South Korea, nearly every developed nation is having serious problems with their birth rates. And in fact, it is a sign of an economy developing, because the more people become developed, the less likely they are to have children. There are many different studies across the board about this. So the government said, we have a problem, we have a birth rate issue. They've now recognized that no amount of talking about it is going to change the reality that the birth rate isn't increasing. And it's a development problem, because the government is putting increased finance into infrastructure and services that need population. So now they say, you know what, we're going to widen the net. We're going to say, if you have one grandparent and you live anywhere in the world and you have one grandparent born in Dominica, you're eligible to get a Dominican citizenship. That to me is problem identified, policy enacted, and then a path created. That gives people hope, because if you're someone in abroad who is a grandparent and you have grandchildren, or you're someone even in Dominica and you have grandchildren abroad, it now gives a path to be able to widen the net and to
We lost you there for a moment.
faith in a budget is that three-pronged path. Issue identified, policy enacted, implementation path shown. And then people get confidence. And I like this. This is something that I think we need more of, because this is a positive way forward for the country. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is, because even if you look at the sporting angle, we've seen how much TLR4 has done for Brand Dominica. I mean, many people don't know, for example, the English footballer Reece James. One of his grandparents is Dominican on his father's side. So, there are a number of sports people. Cape Verde, many of their footballers were not born in Cape Verde, yet they set the world alight. And so that's just in sports. When you look across arts, you look across in entrepreneurship, and then you look at the amount of people who can now have the option of coming to live in Dominica and become part of our society. It's a positive move. So for the young man identifying implementation, that's incredibly important. And I say that all the time. But at the same time, you have to understand what's in there to be able to move forward. The government put certain things in place, and if the population doesn't understand or read about it or get further sensitization about it, then they can't take advantage of benefits which are essentially created for them and for us.
Thank you so much. Regis, I think you understand his perspective on how you thread through policy reform based on an identified problem. And to identify that problem, it is based on data. You look at your population, actual number of individuals born, number of individuals by your net increase in net immigration. You look at where your population centers are, and then you look at the problem from a practical standpoint, and you make an objective decision based on the numbers. And so as we proceed in our discussions, I want us to have an interactive session where we can ask each other questions and probe each other, and maybe invite the public to probe some questions so that we can have a more lively discussion. But I want to start zeroing on specific issues in the budget. For example, Natasha, I recall a couple of years back when you were involved in the youth DYBT program. We had initiated a mentorship program. Here we see that they are reintroducing a community-based mentorship program. And the prelude to that was that you have quite a number of public servants and private sector individuals, professionals who are retired, meaning that they no longer work a 8 to 5 routine, and they have quite a number of skills, experience, and know-hows that could be translated to the next generation of individuals in need, whether in entrepreneurship, small business, farming, and all the various skill sets that are out there. And by making it community-based, you are broadening the base on that. What's your take on that, and what are some of the recommendations you would have provided to the government to ensure that this thing comes of fruit?
So Sangofa is a principle, an African tradition that has never been lost, particularly here within the Caribbean. We have always done a great job of learning from the past. Mentorship offers entrepreneurs, persons who are interested in economic engagement, to connect with persons who have been there and done that. I mean, time and time again, I have said repeatedly on various platforms that I have spent many years taking advice from people who have never run a business a day in their life, And those mistakes are still part of my growth. They have contributed to my coming of age. Mentorship allows persons to synergize and leverage the experience of persons who have been there and done that. So from the surface, just to plainly say, mentorship works. It works when the needs of the persons who are being mentored are front and center. It works well when there are governance structures in place in terms of what are the outputs, what are the expectations, what type of engagement. It works well when there are tangible takeaways for the community, both those who give and those who receive. And I really believe that time to market is critical for persons who are trying to launch out and start something, or persons who are trying to grow and expand. You are looking for you're looking for ground that is fertile. And sometimes when you are right stuck in the middle of, you are in debt, or you are in a 9 to 5 and you have constraints with time, and you are trading your time, but you kind of want to leverage skills. Having access to mentors who can sort of talk you through and talk you out is of course beneficial. And so definitely, entrepreneurial mentorship programs, or programs that focus on helping to build the skills that we need. There are lots of skills that we have lost as we are now trying to diversify, that we are realizing like, whoa, the repository of those skills are now shrinking as people are, moving out of, the public sector into retirement, or persons are transitioning to, spend time with their grandchildren, and providing mentorship as a solid sort of ecosystem would be beneficial. Again, like I said, it has to be governed based on tangible outputs and takeaways, and of course by a system of actually helping persons to accelerate. If you want to leverage something, you're not going to, you know. So we have a call.
Yes.
Online. We want to take
Sure,
a call.
we're gonna
Sure,
take
go
a call.
ahead. We want to interact.
Sure.
We're taking a call right now, or okay.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, thank you for the program. It's first time I'm listening to that program. I don't know the name, but as I'm listening, it's all about mentorship, leadership into small business development of growth in our country. I'm listening to the voice of Kenny Green and to the Mr. Reggie, and I don't know the next lady.
Regis.
But I'm so impressed with the conversation, because a while now I've been asking the people in authority to have more education program under my listen 5 days of the week, political, and there's nobody that can able to sustain that. That is a program that's going to destroy us, for sure. But this program is very educative, because some things I heard Mr. Ken Green have said, you have to train the people to get ready. Because I think in the late 90s, STABEX, which is a European Union program, had set up a program for small business, was launched in Dominica and some part of the Caribbean. Mr. Williams, the former president, and Mr. Thomas at Bexar, they were coordinating that program. I was training there. People like Severin, Mr. Winston and a few others, some grand day like Coal Pot Soap, Heavy Sense. But the program is set up in a way that they would give you the training. You would get a business plan, certificate of business, but the program is set up for cooperative, like 40 million, but you have to be in a cooperative. Most probably they would give you a building, they would set up equipment like machine factories. And because of that, we didn't get access to that money. Now that money is somewhere back into the European Bank because we didn't train for that. We did not know cooperative, but we lose that money. But if you look at back then, in the 70s, the whole movement of the consciousness, as Kelly Green was saying, you see people like Afimate, Rosie Douglas, they would form young cooperatives. A lot of people get money in those times there. For instance, in Marigot, the Candlelight group on West Flat, they had a Harlem, they had a farmers cooperative. So what Kenny Green is saying there is we have to, because look at the market right between Guadeloupe, Martinique. The people cannot even eat the food from the soil because it's so polluted. The water is not healthy to drink. And we don't tap into that because we are not educated. We never train us. It takes me late to get into business. I would never get into business if it wasn't for Bobby Frederick and Yvonne Nassif, former Minister of Tourism. They approached me to get into tourism, but I knew nothing. I had to go to the State College and do a whole tourism program. So that's what Terry Green is saying there. That is what we need. And I find as a such a educated people, we are so behind in a small country with so many bright people. We're just behind. If you look at Singapore, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, these Malta, these places, I don't see why, and Japan and China, I don't see why these people are so much brighter than us. And we have so many degrees. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I like Regis, pick up on what the caller said. You have any comments?
I do not have many comments. I couldn't hear him too well, and I was really trying to piece it together. Sometimes
I think he needs a headset, yes, so that he can hear the questions from the caller. But I think the caller was very articulate. I want to thank him so much for calling in, and again he speaks to the need for knowledge, education. And connecting persons, with the right resource people. And so as I was making that point, that we can utilize these mentorship programs to be able to transfer the skill sets that we need as we continue to speak about development threads that will impact jobs in Dominica. We speak of agro-processing and farmers, and all of these are fundamental areas, development areas and strongholds that need core skills, and mentorship is a great avenue to facilitate and encourage that.
Kenny, if you recall in the opening presentation of Dr. McIntyre this morning, he mentioned that word which stands out, strengthening institutions. We have young Regis here who is very keen in understanding these dynamics. Could you share some light on this issue of strengthening institutions and what's their role in the whole budget implementation process?
Well, that the term strengthening institutions is about, again, implementation of facilities and policies. I'll give an example. A bank without the necessary finance is of no use to the budding farmer or the budding entrepreneur in Dominica. It just won't work. However, when a bank is furnished with finance and people are then able to engage that finance, it gives the institution strength and it gives it validity. And I think that's the main thing that we have to we have to embrace, because um, the key for me is that the budget not is not seen as simply a document, but as a living policy statement that is going to govern some of the actions that people will take, both in their personal and in their professional lives. And that is what I mean by, or what I see as the strengthening institutions part. In terms of taxation, giving people the ability to start to plan to save more, with regards to the new policies on land and home purchasing. And I note, by the way, that is it the government loans board that has been given an extra remit for being able to extend more favorable conditions for public servants and police force members. I note that because it also then puts onus on the banks locally, both Republic and National Bank of Dominica, to also step up to be able to offer greater, more competitive services to the people who are fall outside of the public service, because you would not want to have them left behind. So that's what I mean by that's what I see as being meant by strengthening institutions. We saw also the talk about the regulatory mechanism being put forward by the ECCB for the CBI industry. And that industry will continue to remain important because it is financing three of the major infrastructure projects: the airport, the marina, and the cable car project, all of which are going to have a serious impact on the tourism industry. And I dare say that, given the right policy direction being implemented, that we will move squarely in the next 3 to 5 years to being led by tourism, simply because we have created infrastructure and put things in place to be able to migrate ourselves to a tourism-driven economy, with all of the things that help support that. So we know we've got the agriculture, the agro-processing facility, but it is my firm belief that agriculture as a growth industry is going to have a big connectivity to the tourism industry, because it is far more difficult to export in the global market given the conditions of trade that now exist. Beyond what I would call the smaller, more intimate, huckster-driven exports, it is much more difficult to develop a macro industry for agriculture than to serve the burgeoning tourism industry. As tourism becomes effectively our biggest export, then agriculture then becomes incredibly critical as an ancillary industry to tourism. So that's what I mean by, or that's what I interpret as the strengthening of the institutions. You strengthen tourism through policy, you strengthen agriculture through policy, you build the infrastructure, and then you watch it come to fruit over the next few years.
So many of us have families overseas, as you mentioned, with the your grandparent, at least one grandparent. You could become a citizen of Dominica. How far do we look? Do we look to the Americas, to the UK, to Europe, where we have quite a number of families out there? Or do we look right in the region? Because there are two connections and two links that I would like to introduce and hope that you all can discuss a little further. One is on the family linkage. Right here, Antigua is filled with Dominicans of many descendants. All right, St. Martin, Guadeloupe, Martinique. All right, quite a number of our relatives and families are right on our doorsteps and coming home very often, but doesn't have the benefit of being a citizen of Dominica. That's going to change. But also the link in tourism, as Kenny just mentioned. Why do our huckster trade has survived in the north of Dominica? It's simply because of the booming tourism industry that has populated these economies in St. Martin, in Antigua, St. Kitts, SABA and these other countries, Tortola and the USVI, to our north, where majority of our Oxter trade, our food, our agricultural products are being served. We are saying here we're going to try to return that. Let's have a discussion on those, on linkages, and look at the various linkages that is mentioned in the budget, and how we can allude to that and help the public to understand there is a bigger picture behind just what is said in the budget.
I mean, for sure, rebuilding our national family, I see, is what is sort of included. It's a home for every Dominica, and I'm quoting directly from the national budget fiscal year 2026-2027 budget address summary. I mean, I have siblings who are actually citizens of Dominica by descent, so I am Dominican by birth. And live with my mom and my stepfather. We moved to Trinidad, and my mother had a brother and a sister there, and we returned as a family to Dominica, and we have another sister. So my brother and sister are Dominican by descent. It now means that their children are Dominican
By descent,
and their children's children. Yes. And so I think this is an important point, because we have continued to say that we, more people means, an economy that has a purse that has a further reach. Mm-hmm. It's an opportunity for us to tap into some of that, foreign exchange, that having a bigger, islands like Barbados, who have so many persons who, they are returnees, or they refer to them as, diaspora is not the word I'm looking for. The word I'm looking for doesn't come to mind. But a number of persons who have left the US and left Canada, left Europe, and are living in Barbados. Their contribution to Barbados and to many other islands very similar to that, where you have a very large expat community. That is what expat communities is the word I'm looking for. So this opens Dominica up to the potential for an expat community that can contribute, bring in, retirement funding, investments in stocks and shares, income that they've earned to build homes, to start businesses, to invest in, our communities. All of the festivals that we host, the World Creole Music Festival, the Breakfast Fete, the Gute Dominica, the Poker Run, all of these events and all of this promoting of Dominica through our bouillon industry, to our cultural and creative industries. Even we have gospel festivals. All of these are avenues through which people not just learn about the culture of Dominica, but they have an opportunity to come and see what Dominica is like. When they come and see and they taste and they say, oh, this is a great place to not just play, but to live and work. And that opens up Dominica to opportunities, for building an economy where we need more people. A free 2-year Live in Dominica residence visas. I have a number of professionals. I think we have a call coming in. Let's pause to take the callers. Hello, caller. Good night.
Good evening.
Good evening, Fireman
Yes,
touching base. Good evening to members and members. Good evening to Reginald. I don't say Dominica because I can see that alone at the area alone. Anyhow, forward. No,
evening.
I know only thing I love to everything already. But the problem I have eventually, we have a problem with people that invest in the money in our country. I don't know, we have a lot of millionaires in our country that invest in the money in nothing positive, eventually. Very few are doing things. Now, for us to move forward, we have a lot of people have the money. If they could invest in the country, right? Now we have a lot of people that's out of Rivernica in the foreign, and they have plenty money also. A lot of tourism minister working in no foreign whatsoever. But if they could try to get contact with these people, even those living in the country, but they can try to create something in our country, because right now we have a young generation, as people say. Everybody talk about work. But it means that most of them have education and they don't have no trade, they're not creative. Although they have education, but they don't have a trade, so that's the problem. So we need more people now to come and invest more in our country, you know what I'm saying? To make us better. And another problem I have, I don't know if the Honorable Prime Minister Roosevelt Secretary calling the world boss and members. I don't know right now, I don't look into Africa right now. It's right now Burkina Faso shining. We need to get into Africa right now. We need to get some people right now. Even Caribbean members are working, but we need to get some more people into our country. So we have to step forward right now. We see the West want to have a problem, so I'll go back to the East. You know what I'm saying? So we need more people in the country, and we need more people to have their money. Tired, depend on some people money. That when they put their business, they're not interested in making it better. They come to destroy it and call and say the country have a problem. Invest all the money. Respect the people then. Let's do the right thing. Let's big up our country. That is all I can say for now. Up and running. Make money and come back. Fireman running. Bless up. I give my 2 cents. Give thanks. I'm listening.
Thank you very much, caller.
Thank you, caller. I
Thank
was
you.
just about ending with my final point as the caller came back in terms of the other elements I saw under this rebuilding our national family was returning Dominicans who now have a one-stop service. One of the challenges that I've said is not that we do not have a shortage of ideas. What I find is our time to market, our rate of doing business has always been a concern to me. Sometimes our systems and our processes have been slow to respond to the need of the market that we are trying to attract. I can tell you I work with an outsourcer, and the rate of doing business, while it makes me a lot of money, it also costs me a lot of money. So I think one of the areas that I would definitely want to see more traction is government intentionally launching campaigns that can really ensure that these programs are successful. Repositioning the cell to our public servants, making sure that we have the right mindset, the training, that sort of collective consciousness, and that spirit of collaboration between public and private. I think we need to close that gap. I mean, when small businesses, have challenges with being able to pay their taxes, you really think we want to pay our late and get a 10% fee? No, it's because we really hustling and we really trying to make that difference. So that's one of the things that I am always very conscious about. The budgets I have seen is largely growth centered, and so the relief and all of these proposals, particularly to attract, I see they say 100,000. Boy, I would like 100,000 people in Dominica. That is more business for me. That giving me problems I want. But we have to have, a public service that is working, and we have to have the capacity. And so that capacity has to be supported by, real, policy that can, yes, police people, but at the same time incentivize people and motivate people to recognize that, the economy is for all of us. So that's my 2 cents.
What do you see as the challenge as a young person? What do you see? Just imagine yourself, let's say, being a minister of finance tomorrow, and you have a budget of this nature, which is you have 12 months again to create the avenue to implement this budget. What would you suggest? What would you say to the Ministry of Finance today as a young man?
That's some strong words to be giving me, but I thank you for the question. Well, to answer that question, it's about setting up the right committees, setting up subcommittees and trustworthy persons. One thing I've learned about leadership is you really do have to follow up, and you have to follow through on the tasks that you give people, and you can't. And especially with a $1.24 billion budget, you really do have to split up the work, and you have to ensure that certain organization, the people who you entrust, are doing that in a decent time. As we said earlier, it helps for people to build the trust and to build the faith in the government, but I wanted to comment on the population, the building
Sure.
of the population. And for me, it's good. It would be amazing, for business, amazing for Dominica, amazing for the education, if we can have more persons and more hands on deck in Dominica. And but one thing that we also have to consider is the structure that is in place that would allow for the increase of persons to come into Dominica. For example, a lot of people came down for the bike show, and there were a lot of persons who just don't wear helmet. They don't study bike gear. And can you imagine that, on, let's say you have double the people, you're gonna have double the accidents, you're gonna have you're gonna need more ambulances, better health care, which the budget is which we're striving for. Amen. They got the first successful brain surgery done here in Dominica this year, so that is a strive for it. But and then it's gonna be a lot more. And as well as for me, what I see is young people. The problem that I have most is the easy access towards drugs and alcohol for young people in Dominica. And people might just start young people coming to Dominica just so that they can have this easy access to alcohol and drug. Some 14-year-old girl goes to a bar. You ask for a shot, no ID, no security to be inspecting, to watch these people say, should you really be inside of this bar? Making sure there's none of that in place. So maybe for except for a certain place, but the easy access. So having 100,000 people would be great, and especially with the Grandparents Act as well. If you have a grandparent, then you can qualify for a Dominican citizenship. That's a lot of people. That is a lot of people. I know it's not like back in the day. People used to be having 10, 11, 12 children, and like cousins and nieces and nephews, and but it's that is a lot of people for each family. So that is my take on it. I think we just need to have better structure in place. Better structure in place. Even as you said, with mentorship. If you had structure in place for mentors and people who are 60, because I believe when you're 60, you just can't work anymore, right? They kick you out of your job or whatever it may be. But we'll have structure in place for these mentorships, people, and you would see a lot of more progress and a lot more educated people, as the caller was saying. Sometimes you're just shocked. You're just shocked to see some people and people in Dominica and the lack of education, the increase of ignorance. I feel like we're trying to embrace. Some people are trying to embrace a culture of ignorance when you should be trying to get educated and be aware about the things that are going on in your country. So that's my take on it.
Kenny, he had a mouthful. I'd like you to share a little more on what this young man has been sharing from elderly perspective, as we've been around for a little while. What could we say?
Talking about the structures, we've seen, for example, Natasha alluded to it, and the need for greater population. We see how vibrant the country is during Carnival and Creole Festival, and that's for a snapshot when you probably have 5,000 to 10,000 people on island. It literally enhances the entire country. Businesses record much more sales. There's a much more activity. We've shown ourselves able to handle volumes, even if it's for short periods of time. I'll give you a statistic. Over the last 2 to 3 years, St. Lucia has decreased its hours for Carnival because of violence, and we have increased our hours because over the last 2 years we've had probably 1 or 2 incidents despite having record numbers of people on island. Part of the other issue, a lot of things are on our books, but it takes more than a police force to enforce. We talk about alcohol, we talk about noise abatement, etc. Communities have a role in playing to be able to enforce. If you go into a bar, in many cases there isn't a policeman in the bar enforcing a rule for serving alcohol to minors. Bar owners know better. They choose to serve someone who's a minor consciously knowing that they shouldn't. So that's something that the community needs to enforce. To ask government, who we are already saying is in doing nearly everything, and you hear people saying we want government to do less, we want people less dependent on government, yet at every other instance you hear them mentioning that they want government to step in. That's where the community has to come into play. And quite frankly, diversifying and widening the population gives us a better chance, because you have fresh blood, you have new perspectives, and then you have people who are not willing to do things the way that they always do because simply, but that's what it is, that's the vibes. You know, that gives us a better fighting chance. In terms of Dominica, if you look at tourism development, for example, nearly all of the Eastern Caribbean islands have been ahead of us in building their international airports as far back as the 1980s, with regards to Grenada, and then you have St. Kitts with the Robert Bradshaw Airport, you've had St. Lucia. All of these are predating this government. And what it does, it shows that much of what is being done now is kind of catching up. But when we catch up, Dominica has much more to offer from a tourism perspective and being able to create a wider diversified economy than pretty much any other island in the Eastern Caribbean outside of Barbados. And that gives a lot of hope for the future. Because when you consider, even from a sites point of view, tourism sites, if you go to St. Kitts or Antigua, even Grenada, they do not have the amount of tourism sites that can be monetized or turned into experiences that will bring back return visitors and be able to bring money into the coffers. And that's something to look forward to. And I think we have to pay credence to the fact that there's been a lot of work done on infrastructure. And much of it, and I think Natasha alluded to it earlier, is based on non-tax revenue. And that is huge, because I know it must be painful for the government to make some of the changes that they're doing, whether it is in income tax or in employment tax. I note that they did not make any changes to corporate tax, which, is probably a fiscal step too far given all of the other areas they've pulled revenue from. But there's some really bright spots in being able to grow the economy, because in giving people an opportunity to actually have hope to expand their businesses or to look towards a future where there are more people coming on island to serve the economy, I think there's something really bright about that. And the situation with the government's revenues, it appears more and more that we are possibly heading to a time where income tax will be zeroed. I've heard overtures made to that by the Prime Minister, and it seems to me that more and more our biggest tax is VAT as a consumption tax. So we're being driven into a consumption tax-driven economy rather than a personal income tax and direct taxation economy. And that is something also to look forward to, and I hope in the future we can also make some reform to corporate tax when the revenue base has widened.
Thank you. As we're winding down, any general comments as to what we're looking for, strengthening the future, securing our future? What do we see coming in the few years ahead?
Yes, I'll go first. I look forward. I look forward to the development. Wait, I have a call you want to.
We have a caller.
Yes.
I think he
Yeah,
wants you
sure.
to go ahead.
Right.
I think he wants you to go ahead.
Okay. I look for. No, we're not hearing the call.
Hello, good night.
Yes.
Good night.
Good night.
Good evening.
Okay, thank you for the program, and I listen to the young man who just spoke about the bike. It's such a very important point. And one of the things I would want us to do as our own citizens is get ready for many of those opportunities. How many people that think of printing a T-shirt of Dominica Bike Fest, so that the bikers, when they're going back, can take back to their friends, to entice the friends to come for next year. And that is one of the points I really want to support on what the young man say. And the lady say a point. It is, as a small business person, it is too difficult to even market our product out there, to ship, the cost, to send something up on FedEx. It is too expensive. And she talk about the institution, the right people to have in those government office to get things done quicker. I do manufacturing. If you go on Astafan and sell, you'll see some products. For instance, moringa oil, neem oil, moringa cream, and all those things I have there, ginger oil. The cost of doing manufacturing those things is too expensive. There's no way you can sustain. We're going to lose a lot of our small business. Even the cost of a bottle, $3, we have to find a way to cooperate. We, the producers, have to find a way to build a cooperation that we can get some of those things in and to market our product to ship out. I remember telling the government some time back, look at all our ports, our airport. When you go there, you're supposed to see a booth of the Dominica products. Even the things you can carry, like the dry meat, smoked meat. Everything local is supposed to be there, because when you're at the airport or the seaport, you're looking to buy something to carry back. And there is too difficult. The government need more educated people, retired people, as you said earlier on, to help them. For instance, the elderly people that run in the cultural department now that retire, like Mr. Sobers, Jacko, Miss Bully. I heard there's people one of those days with Wadix. We need people like that to help the government. The people in culture and government office now, they can't do the work like them. These people are more ready, they're more trained. The government has to put things in place to work with these people so that the business can go quicker, because the people in the office can't do all the work. And it's time for the Prime Minister said to realize the old colonial things that was there since in the 40s. You have to change that policy. I don't like to go in ministry. Ministry make me remember slavery. Have a good night.
Thank you very much, caller. You're going ahead, Regis?
Yeah. And like I was saying, I look forward to the development, as I mentioned earlier about the creative industry, and even as the caller is saying here, working with people like Mr. Jackson, Miss Bully, and these people who are ready to build the culture. So as an actor, as someone involved, I even do dance too, as someone involved in the arts, I look forward toward the development of the culture in a way which gives it value, in a way which appreciates it and appreciates each young person, and it also maintains the culture throughout the generations, so things like the rebuilding or maybe construction of a new cultural facility, in Dominica to help with the plays and the dances. These things, this is what I look forward to. And right about now, I think it's a great time to invest into Dominica, and you look at the numbers, you look at the statistics, you look at what's being planned. It's a great time to invest, as a young person, you want to do something or you want to leave a legacy here. Now is the time. And it's all about, and as Mr. Kenneth mentioned, Kenneth Green, Mr. Green mentioned, it's about the community. The communities people need to do more as well. Young people, so I used to, when I was going to SMA, the young people used to say that they can't do this, they can't do that. But when you're young, if you can't do it, when you get older, you're not going to be able to do it anymore, So when you're young, you chase your dreams, too many times young people, they just have a mindset where things have to come to them, but you have to chase the goal. Someone said, be the change you want to see, so I would love to see that more. I would love to see the envisioning of businesses and young persons in the creative economy. This is what I look forward to. Yeah.
Natasha?
From my perspective, as a development consultant, I look to a future where Dominica has the resources, the climate, the economy that is vibrant. I look forward to, I remember once I had a community meeting and the Honorable Prime Minister visited and came into the community, and one of the things that the members of the community joked about was that my house was the house with the biggest pothole, and we laughed about it. But these are the things that citizens on the street are really we're passionate about. That these are the things that impact our quality of life. And so every time I think about development, I look to a future where our city is rebuilt, restructured in such a way that facilitates vibrancy, that facilitates budding entrepreneurs, that takes care of the people. The gentleman mentioned a number of our young men have fallen through the cracks, but that does not mean that there are not systems in place. There are systems in place. However, I believe there's scope for more to be done to issues like mental health and education among safety culture. As we encourage more people to come into Dominica, we cannot tell ourselves that we will remain this. I mean, I still wake up and go for a walk in my community in the morning, but there are things that we will be exposed to: human trafficking, sex trafficking. Our citizens need to be, educated about the cyber risks that we, could potentially face when we are opening up our trade corridors to do online transactions. I mean, development filters down to all the people, and I'm excited about a Dominica where my children's children can call this place home. That we don't have all these beaches that we can't have access to, and all these rivers that we can't swim in. And it starts one step at a time. And I know that many of the choices that this government has made has been to take us to that place of development. And so I'm hoping that there is more acceleration, particularly, in our physical, our physical environments, changes that can support small business, changes that can really impact people's quality of life. And I see some of the policies, quite frankly, here as policies that can facilitate that. And of course, the government is by the people and for the people, and I have always been one that have been very vocal about the fact that I have two daughters, and I am looking for two good, great sons-in-laws. And for that to happen, we have to invest in our young men. and we have to have the social fabric of Dominica should be protected, and the development is a development. I know that we have made strides, but we need to continue to run that course of development, and Dominica should not be left behind. We have always been, if you look at the Eastern Caribbean and some of the things that we have done in terms of the state of workers and laborers. I mean, we have a strong history of ensuring that we look after our people. But as we look at the economic pressures from the external factors, I mean, this 2026-2027 budget, I mean, yes, of course, there are some red flags. I mean, yes, there are some external risks that we will never be able to run away from. But I am looking towards a future where some of these policies, many of these policies, all of these policies are actioned, and we have a Dominica that is diversified and contributing to the quality of life that the people of Dominica deserve. So that's the future I envision. To answer your question.
Changing gears a bit, Kenny. I would like us to speak in the next 10 minutes, share our views on two other issues that was mentioned in the entire course of preparation to where we are, where we headed under the budget. And Minister alluded to our 100% renewable in terms of our supply of energy in Dominica, and also the issue of TVET development, technical vocational education. We'll look at that. Let's take this caller and then we'll go right into that discussion. Caller?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And to your guests and them. There's a question we're talking about the population growth. I wish one day we would have a positive discussion on why is it that our people today are not making much children. And that is not something I wish one day we would have as a topic personally to deal with. Why is it that we stop making children? After people have one, some people just one. Some people have two. Some people maybe have three. And then they put us a full stop. Because I guess so, I don't know. They can tell us if they choose to call when that discussion is up. Now, I want to go outside of the box for just a short while. In saying that we want the population to grow. But here comes a court ruling on people who get pregnant during a rape situation can go anywhere now and have an abortion. They're not looking at that child might be the one to take a cup of water for me, in spite of how the child came about. But sometimes too, you may not let you fall out with the man that you're just 3 weeks pregnant or 6 weeks pregnant. You figure out you can get rid of the child because the man break up with me. And then the court has given the government 6 months to put it out in order that the women will have a right. But to dispose of children that they do not want. I feel it's a sad way that we are heading, and it's not good for a nation, and it hurts to hear that sort of ruling again. Time is changing, and the governments have to follow with the times that are changing. A good discussion, but I expected more. But as time goes by, I guess we will hear more from it. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, caller. So we were looking at the 100% renewable energy target that is set under this budget, and also to the development of technical vocational education in Dominica. What's your take on these issues?
I wanted to segue to something else.
Yes, sure.
I think on the renewables goal, we're well on our way. And the key is that we have much more capacity. And again, we come to population. We have, I believe the last statistic, roughly 500 megawatts of untapped geothermal energy. Right now, the grid, the entire grid capacity is around 18 megawatts, which is tiny. And it's related essentially to our consumption, both commercially and domestically. We need more people. So it's that consistent theme keeps on coming up. We also have the possibility of expanding via undersea cable to provide energy to neighboring islands. In particular, in the past, when I believe the French company EDF were involved, the thought process was that we could supply most likely Martinique and Guadeloupe, but that will take a tremendous amount of capital. I think it is a much more feasible goal, especially given the trend the world is going in, for us to build and twin the increasing capacity of our infrastructure for geothermal with an increasing population and commercial activity, which would be based around policy changes to corporate tax in order to allow more businesses to domicile here in Dominica, and also in increasing the viable population because we've built a tourism industry. And that is key. Again, for TVET, we're in the same position. For TVET, I think one of the limitations, and it's something that, because many young people don't have a context, and because many of the older people in Dominica have done things in a particular way, we don't see the OECS in the way that it was structured to function. So the average person, whether you're in the UK or in Canada or in the US, travels a greater distance to go to work than we are traveling between our islands. There is no barrier for a plumber, for an electrician, to spend a week or 2 weeks in Antigua and then to come back home. There's no barrier except the mindset. The idea that we are trapped within our borders and we're supposed to only work in Dominica is something that people are limiting themselves to. Yes, we've got the Belize, Barbadian freedom of movement, but truth be told, if you're a Dominican and you go to St. Lucia for 2 weeks, just as many St. Lucians did after Maria came to Dominica.
You want to hold your thought there a minute and let's just entertain a caller on the line?
Yeah.
Hello. Hello, good morning.
Good evening.
Good afternoon. Sorry, good evening. Sorry, calling from New York. You know, the gentleman spoke about the bike first, and right away, and I think someone mentioned about tourism, the growth of tourism. But here's my concern. I mean, there are lots of people like me who are trying to come into Dominica for the Creole Festival, and there's no hotel space for them. And I don't know how you can develop tourism when you do not have the rooms to accommodate the people you're inviting to come. I made another attempt to book for 2028, and I am told all rooms are booked. And I'm not a person who goes into Airbnb or this kind of, I don't trust those things, or people's private rooms. So I don't know, if you do not have the hotel stock rooms, how are you going to develop tourism? And I mean, you have the Garaway Hotel in the middle, prime property there. Why can't the government at least take over this property or sell it to somebody who can develop it? You have the Castaways Hotel. I mean, Line Isle, there, bush beats going on there when I was there a year or two ago. I don't know. But I mean, you know, this is just my observation. I don't know how are you all guys going to develop tourism when in 2028 you cannot get a room, in 2030 you cannot get a room, and you are inviting more people to come into the country. This doesn't make sense. Very good program, and I admire these young people here on the program. I mean, they have a lot of foresight and insight into what should be done in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller.
That's a very good comment, and it follows. I mean, for those of us who say, you know, you hear people saying, why are there so many hotels being built? We really don't have more than 500 export-ready rooms for hotels. We need more hotels. That is why the CBI focus has been on promoting the building of hotels. Many people locally don't see what is needed for you to build the capacity for an industry in which you're likely to be having jet planes coming in from the UK, from the US, from Canada, with traffic far exceeding what we're getting now with the current traffic. So it's an endorsement of the government's position to invest in more hotel stocks, because Airbnb can only do it for a particular segment of the market. When it comes to tours, tour groups, and package bookings, they want to come to hotels. So it's a very good point, and as I said, the mission has to continue, which is to grow the hotel room stock on island, because until we get to 1,500 to 2,000 rooms, we are still effectively behind the capacity that is needed to fire our tourism industry. And it's good because there's growth potential, and there's a lot of growth potential.
I think to our public and to the young man here, Regis, you may have heard in the president's introduction, she mentioned about the target for 500 stay-over tourists in Dominica. And that question and that comment from the caller just alludes to the connection between what is planned and how do you get there. This is a critical matrix. So the investments made by government using CBI resources to increase our export-ready rooms is a direct relation to our ability to be able to attract more tourists and have more stay-over tourists in Dominica. So as we continue, let's discuss more about the TVET and the link with youth engagement and education. I heard my 6-year-old daughter and her 22-year-old brother having a feisty conversation because he doesn't see the importance of going to school. And she's just telling him, I love to go to school, and it's necessary for you to go to school. But I think among a lot of our young people and the population, there is a divide in understanding the role of education. And because education in Dominica has traditionally been based on institutions, people think that education is an institutional thing, meaning that you go to a school, a wall system, as opposed to the art of learning, the need for continuous learning, the need to have an open mind and always be learning, whether it is in an institution or whether it is part of your daily process of learning. So let's talk about TVET, which is the other side of education, where has been, I would tell you in my lifetime, has seen persons look down. The plumber has been given less significance than the medical doctor. The mechanic, especially the side road mechanics, who gets you mobile in Dominica, has been looked down as opposed to the dentist. And there is that serious divide. So technical and vocational education development is a very critical thing, and I think we should spend some time and discuss what we can do, how we can go about doing it, and what, based on what the budget has alluded to, what are some of the suggestions that you would tell to the Ministry of Education as they pursue the development of TV in Dominica?
I mean, from my perspective, the welcoming of a Center of Excellence for technical and vocational education is a step in the right direction. I mean, the world has transitioned to a learning economy. You can see that persons who have remained open to continuous professional development, taking on technical skills or skills that facilitate the use of AI in conducting business, have really been able to benefit from diversifying not just their skill portfolio, but diversifying their income. And so I welcome the sort of juxtaposition, or sort of ensuring that we take away the stigma of vocation, of take away that stigma. If we are moving to a tourist industry, if we are moving to a situation where we services will become, will take on so much of our, will provide so many jobs within our economy, we need to sort of configure our thinking about how we sell, we advocate, we train, and what kind of conversations we have about what I like to call real world skill sets. Because really, at the end of the day, when your car is broken, you are not going to call a juice maker. You are going to call a mechanic. When you need food to eat, you are not going to go to a dentist. You are going to go to a farmer. And all of those relationships, that you have with those small persons within your community who sell produce, who have those skill sets of plumbing, who have those skill sets of being able to get your car back on track, those things matter the most when you need it. And nobody asks the mechanic, what school did you go to? The most important thing is, can you fix this car? Yes?
Yeah.
And so we need to sort of begin to, I remember I've always been a strong advocate for ensuring that the school system, academia, embraces and opens up learners to vocations. When I went to high school, I was involved in the Duke of Edinburgh work program, which was very skills oriented. We did gold, silver, bronze. We hiked. We learned how to tie knot. I learned search and rescue, debating skills, how to cook on wild outdoor fires. Do you know, when I left Dominica and I traveled for education, my first job that I got, I worked as a lifeguard and recreational assistant. Do you know I learned to do that? Swimming in the sea. I didn't know that swimming 25 meters, being able to swim a 25-meter pool under 2 minutes was a thing. But all those summers spent swimming between jetties paid off. These are skills that I learned through being part of clubs and learning vocational skill sets that transferred into the world of work. And so I really embrace these sort of technical vocational programs that reward persons for years of experience actually doing, and provide structure around what you've done, being able to document your experience and not just the theory sort of, which academia, I'm not saying it's not important, but we need to be able to marry the two, because we've seen that there are lots of gaps in skill sets that have been missed because we have spent so much time, focusing purely on academia. So this technical vocational drive is important for us as a people as we move forward.
Regis?
Yeah, and just to add, I'm very much in favor of TVET, and skills, because now a lot of young people, men, women that I know, they just want to get right to the money, and that is kind of the culture that we're kind of seeing today. But with that being said, and when you see education, I mean, it have the people who are gonna want to be doctors, and the people who want to go out and pursue a long line of tertiary education. But most people, probably to the average, you ask them what do they want, they say a bachelor's degree most, and then they want to go out in the world and work and pay their bills and live off like that. And from a lot of young men that I know, they want to do some hands-on work. They want to, some people for some children, they're not educationally inclined. They want to do things like mechanic and plumbing, and there are plumbers.
Correction, academically inclined.
What I say?
Education.
Oh, sorry. academically inclined. Some plumbers make more than accountants. For sure, some in the States, there are master plumbers, and these guys, I mean, they're good at their stuff. So there's really no shame to it, and I feel parents should be, open to that their child isn't a brain box, and he wants to go, or he or she wants to go out and build houses, do construction, even surveying, and debating. I mean, just learning different skills so much. I'm very much in favor, and as it helps to go along with the devices, it might take people away from technology a little more, take young people away from technology a little more. They're out there mixing the concrete, or they're out in the field doing practical things, even joining clubs. Dominica probably needs more clubs, but even joining clubs like CYEN, which plant trees and they go out and do environmental work, that might encourage that, and young people going out and looking for opportunity outside of school. So TVET, I'm very much in favor.
Can I just add one point? We have a caller on the line. Do we have a caller? Okay, I thought I saw a signal. There's this concept that behind TVET, that people often say, if you're not academically inclined, you're more you oh, it's almost like the sell is you can do things manually, that's okay. The concept really is it's the methodology that is incorporated in the TVET process, where people can build a portfolio through actively doing. It doesn't mean that this concept that you're less than, or you're less smart, or no. TVET and the process of building a portfolio. Everybody has a portfolio, your little curriculum.
Right.
Yes, it is centered on doing while learning, through doing and documenting that learning. Because sometimes someone will sit and you might say 1 + 1 is 2, and it might take them a little while to get it. But if you show them 1 + 1 is 2, they add one block, and they see it with the support of a mentor. Before when you are appointees, you because you are there right next to your mentor, so you can see for real. But I've been doing 1 + 1 is 2 all the time. Oh, I got it. So you are actually building a portfolio, and I think that's important.
And I thank you for the correction. For me, I was born in the States, in the United States, and usually in high school, they do practical things. When I came to Dominica, I came in about third form SMA, and it really wasn't like that. It really wasn't like that, where you go out and you're doing things practically. So I thank you for the correction.
Yeah, and I thank God that this policy now allows your grandchildren, your children to be Dominican, because your grandfather is Dominican. We thank God for that.
Kenny,
So
you were
their
saying?
grandfather.
Yeah.
That's
So
good.
quick thing, I don't want to belabor the point. Natasha mentioned it. The key difference is for academic fields, you go through the study process like a doctor, like a lawyer, etc., and then you come in and you practice. And even then, there is a need for mentorship, but people generally tend to slot in after doing the years of academic experience. The biggest challenge for TVET has always been the ability to integrate people into apprenticeships, because many of the people, there's so much potential and demand for surveyors, for welders, for technicians like plumbers and electricians, but you need someone not just to mentor you, but someone who is going to effectively be your first boss, and that person has to first of all, accept the nuances of a younger person who is going to, from a social point of view, not have the same kind of social skills that they had when they were coming in. And so you tend to find, I find that uniformly, that a lot of the technicians in all of these areas tend to be lone rangers. The people who are supposed to be the mentors tend to be lone rangers. And you see them, you go to them and they're a guy, you'll call them plumber, or you'll call them electrician, but they tend to work on their own. And that's one of the challenges. And I think TVET, I know there's the facility in Goodwill is supposed to be targeted towards that. I think one of the things that has to be a key component is to place people in suitable apprenticeship jobs so that, as Natasha said, they can learn through doing, because there is so much knowledge that has to be imparted by the guy who's in the field for 10, 15 years and is looking for someone who is going to listen to him and observe what he does rather than basically try and count the cash before he starts working. I know, I'll give a shout out to, one of the younger surveyors, Kevin Seaman. I know that he is unique in the private sector, even at his age, because there's a dearth of surveyors, of young surveyors. And as I said, there's a demand area, and I don't even think about it in context only to Dominica. Again, I always think OECS minimum and Caribbean, because when you develop these skill sets, you give people wings. You give them the ability to go to Antigua to do a contract and come back home. You give them the ability to bid on contracts that are being advertised for the sub-region. You give people options. And so TVET is critical, but also giving some path beyond the education part is critical, and that means attaching them to suitable mentors and people who are going to adopt them as trainees.
5 seconds, round up to each person. What do you want to say finally as we wrap up?
I continue to just advocate from my perspective as ambitious young professional that this budget is a budget for the people, time to market is important. I'm looking to see the implementation and rollout hit us where it matters most, and I have seen some very transparent areas where this budget address, there are some risks that are external and perhaps maybe out of the control of the government, but it is largely on the hope that we will be growing as an economy. And so I'm looking forward to, of course, the elements of growth and, of course, being open-minded, as a Dominican citizen.
Regis?
Yes, and I just want to conclude by saying thank you for having me on one, and I look forward to the improvement of the country and the development, especially as it relates to young people, and creating opportunities for them. As I mentioned, specifically in the creative industry, I look forward to being a part of it, being a part of the movement, and I'm grateful.
Kenny?
Can we hear Kenny?
We lost Kenny there for a moment.
Are you unmuted or?
I got you. I know I got you. I was on mute.
Right.
I'd like to take it in a different direction slightly in stating that the government has a couple of critical pillar projects, namely the international airport, the marina, and the cable car project, which are critical to the next stage of our tourism development. And the last few years, and we've had 12 years of CBI, which is another discussion altogether. We've had 12 years of CBI from 2014. And everything has led up to this. It was never meant to last forever. But at the same time, for us to make the move on, we have to complete this project so that we can move on to a new mixed economy. And that will change Dominica forever. And it is critical that those projects are completed because it creates an infrastructure for us to diversify our economy and to also attract a greater population to Dominica. The studies are conclusive pretty much in every country where there's been infrastructure developed that is going to promote inward migration, either through tourism or population growth, that you see further development. And so we have to prepare ourselves for it. Someone like Natasha is going to reap the benefits, I believe, in the future as someone who has got a service offering from offering of outsourced services. And the young man there, the world is your oyster when you have the opportunity to pick and choose the areas in which it's going to make your life more viable in remaining and living and working in Dominica. So I hope we can complete those aims.
So thank you very much, panelists. We have come to the end of our tenure here on DBS Radio as we had some discussions on the 2026-2027 budget presented by Honorable Dr. Irvin McIntyre. Remember, the key takeaway is that the budget is part of the social contract which he mentioned that the government holds as its role and sharing its responsibility to the people of Dominica. We hope that as we implement this year's budget, we'll see a greater effort towards job creation, towards digitalizing the economy, strengthening our institution, ensuring that we are able to provide services in a diligent, efficient, and more effective manner, ensuring that we maintain our goal of having 100% renewable energy supply, knowing that this is going to be very attractive to new industries as we lower the cost of doing business in Dominica, and of course that we diversify our people base through the TVET development, but also through one of the most effective measures in the budget, which is the grandparenting, I'll call it the grandparenting effect of having Dominicans all over the world being able to become citizens of Dominica as long as they have a grandparent that is of their heritage. Thank you very much, panelists. It's been a nice 2 hours we have spent there. We hope we can continue this debate in our homes, in our offices, and across Dominica as government takes its effort to transition this economy as we prepare for our major infrastructure developments that's coming round the bend with the international airport, the marina, the cable car, and the many other developments that's happening in our country. We thank you once again. We thank the management and staff of DBS. We thank our families and friends, and we look forward to another year of feisty debates and good work and implementation. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
All right, yeah, you had it. We were just we tuned with some live discussion with Kenny Green as the on via Zoom, Natasha Labad, Dylan Registe, and Reginald Severin as moderator. So thank you guys. So that's DBS Radio. 6 minutes after the hour of 9 o'clock here. My name is Michael Jacques. I'll be with you, hanging on with you until 11. With different vibes with Get Empowered. So we'll be doing that for a while. But good to have all of you people locked in here on the Nation Station. And hope you found the discussion profitable. Today was Budget Day on the island of Dominica. I listened in part to the debate, my own thoughts and feelings and my own views on it, which I will keep to myself unless I create any kind of stir. But that was the discussion today. Debate, the budget debate continues on Thursday at 10 o'clock, I guess, with the opposition. Was the opposition leader, the opposition person, I guess, making their early presentation, and then the debate will roll on. So we're looking forward to that kind of thing. All right, but that was DBS Radio, just giving you a feel and a feedback here on what it was like with the thing. All right, so that's basically what. All right.